Wake up from your St. Patrick's Day hangover. It is another morning here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now, a Thursday morning with the weekend almost here and the madness of March almost in full swing with the NCAA tournament not far from starting. This is another edition of Mic'd Up here on PSL. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and he is not Mike Vukovcan. His name also is not Mike.
My middle name is Michael.
Okay, I didn't know that actually. So that works as well, but he's Alan Saunders. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Alan Saunders of Pittsburgh Sports Now. So, Alan, I appreciate you filling in here for Mike. So, Mic'd Up does not have to just be me going crazy. You also have Michael in your name, so it's a middle name. So it works as well with Mic'd Up there. We're going to touch on, of course, the madness is not just on the hardwood. We're going to touch on some Steelers off-season news and what the hell's been going on. We have it all over there at SteelersNow.com. But kind of now we want to touch on what's next for the Steelers. So get our prediction hat on what's next for the Steelers. We've touched on what's been going on ad nauseum, but what's next for the Steelers seems to be a question that we can address. And also a conversation about Pitt hoops. No, they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament, but they're still generating news, and some may say not for the positive news, but we'll see how positive or negative this offseason will be for the Pitt Panthers. And also kind of this will piggyback off of the conversation that Mike and I had on our last show about the new transfer rules and kind of the transfers running amok all over college sports. So, Alan, to get things started, we all know the Steelers have been heavily involved in the NFL offseason. I mean, not only have we lost an hour of sleep this past week, but it's hard to catch up with it because every time you blink an eye, it's one of us throwing a text in or a tweet into the group text, and it seems like there's never a break. The Steelers are involved in everything. They've lost some. They have brought some players back. There's still question marks on what's going to happen with a few players, Juju Connor in particular. We even put up a recent story on Steelers Now last night about possibly Alejandro Villanueva coming back, as John Clayton speculates that a possibility, something that I don't think Steeler fans probably thought was going to happen, probably thought he was gone for about a year or so. But what's next right now for the Steelers? They're under the cap. There's not tons of room in terms of flexibility. There's still work to be done. There's still question marks around Joe Hayden in particular and his deal, Villanueva. Juju Connor, where they're going to play, seemingly not with the Steelers, but what's going to happen, some dominoes still to fall. What would you say is next, and maybe what should be next for the Steelers?
They need to find more cap space. As it stands right now, they can't sign anybody. They have somewhere in the neighborhood, somewhere in the $3 million worth of cap space, and they've got to sign their draft class. Their draft pool's $8.5 million. Right. So, I mean, there's offset there. So it's probably more like $4.5 million for the draft class. Another million for 52 and 53, and you got to sign a practice squad. You have to have room as you go into the season for injuries to go over.
Yep.
You can't just spend the cap in April, and so they don't have enough room to do anything right now. Even though they have some room, they're cap compliant. They don't have enough room to sign anybody to anything more than maybe $1 million or something like that. They've got to renegotiate Stephon Tuitt's contract. I think that's a must. And then I think they've got to find another way to make some cap space, whether that's an extension with maybe a Steven Nelson, whether it's some kind of voidable year like we saw they did with Ben Roethlisberger with a guy like Joe Hayden.
Well, the voidable year is what John Clayton brought up with Alejandro Villanueva. That's what he was bringing up, the voidable year with him.
Yeah, and it also could just be another player release like we saw with Vince Williams. I don't think that's out of the question that another veteran player could be released to make this salary cap work. Tuitt is the one guy that you can do the restructure. And when we talk about the restructuring, like, oh, yeah, he's helping the team. Not really. He's getting his money up front. He's helping him. The team being helped is a benefit, right? So that Tuitt restructure, that's a no-brainer for everyone. Everyone wins, right? Steelers get their cap space now. Tuitt gets his money now. Everybody's happy. They can also do that with Chris Boswell, but he only gets them about $1 million. The things with Hayden or DeCastro or Nelson, the player and the team have to agree on future value. You have to add years to the contract. So the Steelers want to add a year to the contract for Joe Hayden to push some of this 2011 money to 2020 or 2021 money to 2022, right? So they say, okay, we'll add a year to the contract. Well, there's got to be a salary on that year to the contract, right? Well, what if Joe Hayden wants to be $15 million and the Steelers want it to be $7 million? Like, that's not going to work. You can't, And so it's real easy to say, okay, to it, maybe Boswell, you clear about another $5 million. You could at least do some business. They could re-sign a guy like, or add maybe they could add a guy like Jesse James. We saw Al Woods was released today. We saw LJ Fort was released again. None of these guys are going to break the bank. I think looking at the way the running back market is going, I think they may be able to make a signing there, whether that's James Conner or whether that's someone in from the outside. I think running backs are going to be available for cheap, maybe even at the minimum. And so they could probably do something like that. They're not going to make a sign, like they couldn't even offer Juju a contract that's not an insult.
Yeah, honestly, that's something that I think everyone's losing
like
sight
they could
of.
not Juju would have to take like a 90% pay cut to stay. And I think the wide receiver market is turning out to be soft. I don't think he's going to end up getting what he thought he was going to get, but he's still going to get like 10 times more than the Steelers can pay him. And so that's where they stand with that. That's what's next. They've got to find some more cap space. I'm honestly a little surprised that Tuitt's contract hasn't been restructured already. I'm surprised they haven't come up with something with Hayden, Nelson, or DeCastro already. But they are compliant. They do have time now. But other teams are signing the players. If you want to – the idea of making that space is to make some room to do something with it. They've got a ton of holes on this team, far more than can be filled in the draft. They need a running back. They need a fourth or a fifth wide receiver. They need a second tight end. They need a second guard, or a third guard. They need a third tackle. They need a punter. They don't have Jordan Berry's a free agent. They don't even have Corliss Waitman's on the roster, I guess, but they don't even have a punter that's ever kicked one single NFL punt. Okay. They need a dime corner. They need a starting inside linebacker. Or maybe if they really trust Robert Spillane, they need a backup inside linebacker. They need a nose tackle. They need backup free safety. So they can't just take this team as it is right now and go in the draft and be like, we're good. They have to find more room so that they can bring in some of these guys, the Woods, the Forts, the Jesse James, and it does. Listen, we talk about the guys that are former Steelers. It doesn't have to be former Steelers. We've seen them bring in other guys of that ilk, like a John Bostic or Alualu when he first came to the team.
Right.
A guy that's just going to be a steady rotation or fill in or backup kind of player. They need those at a bunch of positions, and they need to make cap space to do it.
I also think, as much as people may roll their eyes about Jesse James because it's a former Steeler, so of course fans want him and the Steelers would be interested in some way, he actually would make some sense now because he got his money at one point. He left. His value is not what it was at that point a couple years ago. And now you fit him in there with Ebron. We see what the Patriots are doing. A lot of teams are trying those two tight end sets. That wouldn't be crazy. Hayden restructuring would be interesting because, of course, when that was broached on Steelers Now a week and a half ago, he didn't enjoy it too much. Certainly didn't like the fact that maybe he would no longer be a Steeler and suffer the Vince Williams fate. So I thought maybe the only way he knew something that we didn't is he was aware of a restructuring that was going to occur because his figure seems kind of high for him. But, of course, as you bring up, it would have to be putting more years on these deals. And some of these players, they may not want to do it.
31. Yeah, how long is he going to – I think Joe Hayden is a really high-level player. I don't want to say –
he's just not healthy enough, I feel like, for me, for that price. But he's a great guy and can be productive.
I think he's worth the money he's getting to the Steelers because they've been really bad at drafting defensive backs.
Okay.
And so when you're bad at drafting a position, you have to go pay.
He's been better than Steven Nelson, too.
You have to go pay to get it. I think Nelson's been excellent. I'd sign him for as much and as long as he wants because I think he's been great. But DeCastro is also 31. So two of those three guys that are in that room where they could be restructured are certainly on the back half of their contract. And I don't think DeCastro was very good last year. Now he was injured. It's a weird year with COVID. I don't know how much you can put into that, but like I would if I'm Kevin Colbert, it's not like, to me, it's like, oh, well, here's a blank check, guys. Here's 2 more years, whatever you want. Just let me know. Like, I don't think that works for those players. Maybe it does for Nelson. I think Nelson, because he's younger, you could say that Nelson could go get 3 to 5 year contract. He's 28. So you could give Nelson 3 to 5 years, whatever, some sort of reasonable salary, make it happen. Okay, I'm fine with that. And I think the Steelers would be too. The other 2 guys, I think, is a little bit more questionable. It's a little more difficult. And that's where the prospect of, okay, well, if they can't work out an extension, somebody's got to go, right? Like, they can't just keep the team the way it is. Like, at some point, something has to happen. Right. So they've either got to work out an extension with one of these guys or somebody ends up getting cut. It's like a weird backwards game of chicken.
This is also, as Alan gets mic'd up here on Mic'd Up in the Morning on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now. His middle name's Michael, so it works as well there in replace of Mike Vukovcan. I think it also paints the picture again, and this drum has been beaten numerous times, on why 2020 was the year to seize the day. That was the year where those veterans were still there. Some of them weren't cashing in fully. Some of them were still on that deal from being with the Steelers their whole career. It didn't happen, and this is now the side effect. Some are surprised. You and I are not, and I feel like anyone who's been paying attention shouldn't be surprised. We'll see what happens, not only what the Steelers are going to do, but the future, because as you talked about, as I've talked about ad nauseum, as just is the case, I mentioned it on my show too, the Juju deal, it's not personal, it's just business. There's no money there. It doesn't matter anyone's opinion or anything about off the field or antics. None of that matters. There's just not money to give him. And even if you look at John Brown, who recently signed, that was rumored to the Steelers, that was making comments about coming to the Steelers. 70-plus catches, 1,000-plus yards. That's more yards than Juju. It's less catches, but it's more yards per catch. Juju didn't have a great year last year. So the market's dry for him. It's not great for him. He'll eventually, someone will pay him. But there are other receivers you can get that production from for less money, and the receiver position is just not plentiful right now. Alan Saunders filling in for Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here on Mic'd Up on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Smash that subscribe button if you like this. I also got to mention Mic'd Up is brought to you by Martin Lawn Services. Hit them up when you can for all your lawn service needs. I know we actually got a few clients from this show for Martin, so that's definitely a plus for us here at the network. Alan, to round things out here on the Thursday morning show, March Madness is not just about football, even though it seems that way with the NFL churning all the headlines. It's also about college basketball, and that includes not just who's playing in the NCAA tournament. It includes teams whose season is over, including the Pitt Panthers in particular. Losing a slew of players, going from Xavier Johnson to Tony to even more now, losing 4, I believe. Some fans are freaking out. Certainly pressure's on Jeff Capel to not only rebound and have a better year next year that doesn't putter away the season, losing a lot of games down the stretch, but to kind of retool, certainly with Champagne's future a question mark. What are your thoughts about the situation for the Pitt Panthers, the future of this program, the pressure on Capel, and is it a big deal they're losing players, or maybe is it much ado about nothing and kind of the norm these days? Is that being overblown at all?
Well, I don't think it's good when 2 of your 3 best players leave the team in the middle of the season. Like, no one would say that is good. Right. But, however, look around. Duquesne's starting point guard left at the semester break. West Virginia's starting center left at the semester break.
Right.
Robert Morris's best player left with 5 games left in the season. Penn State just had its entire starting lineup transfer at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Okay? Yes, this is not – none of these things are good. But I think what happens is people that are not tuned into the sport as a whole and are just super tuned into their team don't understand what's going on. There are 40 teams worth of players in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
40 full scholarship teams worth of players in the transfer portal. There will be no problem for Jeff Capel. And here's the other thing, okay? I think that you can make some legitimate criticism. After 3 years, I think there's some things we can say about Jeff Capel, especially the way, like, his teams have not finished well.
Yeah.
I think we can say that, right? Okay?
That's an understatement, yeah.
Yeah, I think we can say that. I think we can say that there's something that has gone wrong with the personalities, right? When you have the kind of conflict that causes 2 guys to leave the team late in the year. You get a kid, a high prospect arrested on felony charges, something this year at least. This was not a carryover, but this year something went wrong with the personalities on the team, with the culture of the team. Okay, and I think at the end of the day, the head coach. Look, sometimes kids do dumb stuff, but at the end of the day, the head coach is responsible for the culture of the team. And I don't think they've been very consistent in general. I think they've been pretty inconsistent, and I think Jeff Capel he has agreed with that. He's called them, I think, frustratingly inconsistent at times. So if you want to say, like, I don't think Jeff Capel's done a great job, and here's why, and those are the reasons you give, I think that's fair. Okay. Yeah. But if you say the sky is falling because it's March 17th and Pitt has 4, maybe has 5, maybe 6, maybe 7 open scholarships, depending on what happens with Hughley and Justin Champagnie, and they don't have any commits for the class of 2021, and you think, oh my God, this is the disaster. To me, that's bogus, because in 3 years at Pitt, Jeff Capel has like 3 of the best recruiting classes in Pitt's last 20 years.
It doesn't seem like recruiting's an issue. It seems like maybe coaching during the season and keeping.
He's got like 1, 3, and 5 of Pitt's best recruiting rankings since Steven Adams was here, and so, and this is a guy that recruited. He made Duke's recruiting better when he came back as an assistant.
Right.
And there's a million guys in the transfer portal. And this year, because kids have been waiting to see what's going to happen if they're going to let visits happen this summer, there are way more uncommitted seniors than there usually are at this time of year. Usually March, you're picking up scraps. Instead, there's a whole bunch of 2021 players out there that are still able to make contributions. And it's not like he needs 5-star guys. Look at the players that have been significant contributors for Capel. Xavier Johnson, 3-star player. Justin Champagnie, 3-star player. I don't think he needs necessarily, look, would it help to go get a 5-star? Sure, but they're not out there. But he has proven that he doesn't need a 5-star player to get positive contributions. Jeff Capel is going to get guys. All those things I said about Jeff Capel are legit criticisms. Being worried about Jeff Capel not being able to get guys is absurd. He's going to get dudes. He's going to fill the team. They're going to have – they may play short 1 scholarship or something like that. They've done that in the past just to keep the classes balanced. There are a ton of available players, and Jeff Capel has proven over and over again he's really, really good at recruiting. So just like if you're worried about the first stuff, okay, maybe you should still be worried. Maybe you should wait and see what the team they're able to put together on the floor next fall is able to do. If you're worried because it looks like they don't have enough guys on the roster, please, this is the way college basketball is right now. There are dozens of teams in worse shape. Cincinnati, who didn't even have a bad year, just had 3 guys transfer. I'm like, what? They're just in the – go look at the portal. Go to verbal commits or go to 247 and go look at the transfer portal and just scroll. It's like it's like you open the scroll and it just rolls down to the floor and over to the other side of the room. Like there's a million.
It's longer than the Browns jersey.
Yeah, there's a million kids. Yeah. They'll get kids. Don't worry. He's already in on a bunch of really good ones. Mike Vukovcan and George Michalowski have been absolutely killing the college basketball coverage of Pittsburgh sports now, as they have really been focused on the transfers, on the remaining 2021 guys, and they're doing a great job. There's a ton of players out there. Pitt will get them. I'm sure of it. And so I've been kicking that around in my head for a couple days, and I needed to get it off my chest because I see people like Terrell Brown went in the portal. Terrell Brown walked on senior day. We knew he wasn't coming back. That's like big hint number 1, like bold flashing lights. Guys don't walk on senior day and then come back. It's like we knew he wasn't coming back. Relax. Of course he's in the transfer portal. And Terrell Brown's a great dude, and he stuck with Pitt for 4 years, even through the transition from Stallings to Capel, and he. Right. He's going to get his degree, so good for him. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. I hope TB has a wonderful 5th senior season wherever he goes and goes and kills it. But like I mean, a guy played like 11 minutes a game. Like, there's no reason to be freaking out about him leaving. Just relax. Everybody needs to relax. It'll be fine. There will be a full roster on November 5th, I promise.
So you start out with the full vigor. We love it for mic'd up, and then you get subdued. It'll be okay. It'll be put everybody on the couch. It's almost
I'm sending everybody to work in a good mood, Mike. That's what I'm doing.
I'm happy you're doing that. That's actually the plan here on Pittsburgh Sports Live with this morning show.
I had to wake them up. Yeah. I had to wake them up, and then we're going to send them on our way.
Especially after last night for many people, with it being St. Patrick's Day. So they need to be woken up, be screamed at, and probably figuring between the two of us that it might be me, but it was you for this broadcast. So I'm happy to pass the torch here on Mic'd Up. Yeah, I mean, I can't deny any of that. It's not a Pitt issue in particular. It's not just exclusive to Pitt. I think if I was a Pitt fan, my ire would be where they were after the Duke game, especially what we were talking about after the post-game show, discussing NCAA tournament and then puttering that away. And some of those are losses to good teams. Some of them are losses to equal or worse teams. I could see that annoyance. I wouldn't have a concern that Capel can retool a roster or recruit, certainly bringing in Champagnie. Nobody thought this would be Champagnie years ago when he brought him in. So that's not an issue. That's not even really a concern for a lot of these coaches that have lost players even locally or regionally. Dambrod, Huggins, they can recruit like crazy. Yeah, they're losing guys, but they'll bring others in. The issue, and then Mike and I discussed on the last show, so people can go over there on the archive to get the full takes, and Mike brought this up, that you're already at halfway to last year's total in terms of players bouncing around. It has almost become a little bit of an epidemic, and I do get the fact of it now fairs things up with players doing it where coaches used to be able to bounce and ruin things, and a player would go to a school for a coach, and the coach would dump the player and kind of ruin his college career in a way. So that's only fair now, but it does set the possibility that if you have a coach say one wrong thing to a player and he gets upset, that all of a sudden he can bounce. So it's not run amok. We'll see where it goes, but it's not just a Pitt thing by any means. But I got to commend all of you out there, not only to hit up Martin Lawn Services at 412-849-5894, when we appreciate him for making this morning show happen on PSO and PSN, but also to hit up all these sites. You're going to get the recruiting news over there at PSN. Obviously, Steelers Now, these sites in particular, topics of this show. Tons of madness going on over there at Steelers Now. And then, of course, the tournament will happen. I'm going to have a post-game show for you over there at WV Sports Now after the only one of the regional teams to be in the NCAA tournament, the Mountaineers, play. And talk about being tired and doing it for the people and needing some coffee and then doing a morning show the next day somehow. I will not be sleeping thanks to the 9:50 tip-off time there for West Virginia. But that does it for this edition of Mic'd Up here as Alan gets mic'd up. The middle name works as he replaces Mike Vukovcan. So for Alan Saunders, for Mike Vukovcan, for all of us at Pittsburgh Sports Now and Pittsburgh Sports Live, I'm Mike Asti. Once again, call Martin Lawn Services there for all your lawn care needs. And good morning. You now should be woken up if you weren't already after that rant, and have fun going about your day, and make sure to hit up all the sites for all your coverage throughout the day.